Okay, so tonight we're completing our discussion on chapter 4 of the Play in Full, the Lalitavistara Sutra. And so we've been on chapter 4, which is the discussions on the gateway to the light of the Dharma. So in all these different verses, these 108, 109 verses, talking about the different aspects, which are all gateways to the light of the Dharma. So this that we're about to recite was a more or less a summation prayer that the bodhisattva Shakyamuni recited. This all took place in Tushita heaven, and this was the bodhisattva Shakyamuni before he became incarnate into the womb of his mother. So this is very profound. So, Kongo, would you mind reciting this then? So we can
Sure.
start on 4.36 and carry through, and then we'll circle back and we'll talk about each of the stanzas.
Monks, at the time the Bodhisattva uttered these verses, in order to bring even more joy to the assembly of gods. At the time that the guide, the lion of men, passes away and descends from the supreme realm of the heaven of joy, he proclaims these words to the gods. Abandon all forms of mindlessness. The multitude of divine pleasures, all wonderful things conjured up by the mind, all of this is caused by virtuous actions. So listen now to learn about these actions. Acknowledge the kindness done to you. Do not fall back into the three lower realms. After exhausting your previous stores of merit, there is only unhappiness and suffering there. Once you develop respect for me, apply yourself earnestly to practicing the teachings that you have heard, and you will inevitably attain boundless joy. All desirable things are impermanent and unstable. Nothing is eternal, not even the eons. Everything is like a mirage or an illusion, and as fleeting as lightning or a water bubble. The pleasures brought about by the qualities of desirable things is as unsatisfying as drinking salt water, but those with noble, pristine knowledge that transcend the world are satisfied. Goddesses, companions, and beautiful songs are like the audience of a play. They are like a crowd of people who assemble and then go their own separate ways. In the realms of the conditioned, there are no allies, no friends, no relatives, and no retinue. And besides, the karma that results from good deeds also binds one and ever follows behind one back. Therefore, be harmonious with one another. Act with a loving and benevolent mind. Engage in wholesome activities, for actions done well bring no torment. Please recall the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha and do not slip into heedlessness. Those who delight in study, discipline, and generosity are endowed with patience and gentleness. Investigate suffering, impermanence, and lack of self. Examine these three phenomena thoroughly. They occur in connection to causes and conditions. They are void of life and have no owner. Whatever miraculous powers you see in me, and whatever elegance, wisdom, and qualities I may have, all of this is caused by virtuous deeds arising from study, discipline, and conscientiousness. For the welfare, benefit, and love of sentient beings, you should emulate me with your discipline, study, conscientiousness, generosity, restraint, and self-control. For you will not be able to accomplish the auspicious teachings by the mere sound of your voice and speech. Please adopt the right conduct and practice what you teach. Do not simply follow what others say, exert yourself continuous concentration. When acting, one takes the opportunity. Without acting, one does not accomplish anything. Recall all the suffering you have experienced, circling through cyclic existence until now. If you fall prey to distortions, nirvana and freedom from attachment will not be achieved. Therefore, having now obtained freedom, a spiritual guide, and a conducive environment, and having met with the superior teachings of Dharma, you should pacify attachment and the other afflictions. Freed from pride, arrogance, and conceit, always flexible, upright, and honest, dedicate yourself to reaching the transcendence of suffering and apply yourself to realizing the path. Disperse all the darkness and turpidity of ignorance with the lamp of knowledge. Tear the net of error with its latencies, using the vajra of wisdom. What need is there to say many things? It is in your interest to follow this teaching. If you do not abide by this teaching, then it is not the fault of the teaching. When I attain awakening and shower down the teachings that lead to immortality, you who have pure mind should come and listen to the true Dharma. This concludes the 4th chapter on the gateways to the light of the Dharma.
Very good. Thank you very much. So does anybody have a general statement that you'd like to make about this? Okay. So if we can go to the first part of 4.36, it says, monks at that time, the bodhisattva uttered these verses in order to bring about even more joy to the assembly of gods. So here it's talking to the assembly of gods who are going to manifest on earth. These are to be human beings who will be human beings, godlike human beings, in the God realm. So he's giving them instructions, more or less, as to how to apply the Dharma teachings that they've been exposed to in Tushita heaven, so that they may bring benefit to many human beings on earth who are looking for a godlike instruction. The Bodhisattva Shakyamuni, he will transcend that. He will show the way beyond that, but he's talking to the gods so that they may recognize the deeds that they are to engage with themselves. So it says at that time, the guide, the line of men, passes away and descends from the supreme realm of the heaven of joy. So he's talking about himself. He's talking about that when he leaves Tushita heaven, and he becomes the guide, the lion of men, passes away from Tushita heaven and reincarnates as a human being into our human realm, into what we call earth and so on, and descends from the supreme realm of the heaven of joy. So this heaven of joy is Tushita. And this Tushita, if we look it up in our glossary, if we go to page G241, 241, so heaven of joy is listed here. And Konga, would you recite the definition for heaven of joy, please?
The 4th of the 6 heavens of the desire realm, also the name of the gods living there. It is the paradise in which the Buddha Shakyamuni lived as the 10th level bodhisattva and regent, I don't know sure how to pronounce that, Savetakatu, prior to his birth in this world, and is also where all future Buddhas dwell prior to their awakening. At present, the regent of the heaven of joy is Bodhisattva Maitreya, the future Buddha.
Okay, so now let's look at who Maitreya is. So we're seeing that Tushita is like the launching ground, if you will, for these bodhisattvas to be reborn into human form, into human realm. So Shakyamuni Buddha is coming down as a Buddha. The gods are coming down as gods. But it also says, at the present, the regent of the heaven of joy is the Bodhisattva Maitreya, the future Buddha. So in the absence of Shakyamuni Buddha, who's going to earth, then Maitreya becomes his regent, remaining in Tushita. So the regent is continuing the teachings, continuing the administration, if you will, of the Dharma in Tushita heaven, the regent who's taking up the seat, albeit temporarily, waiting to be born again himself into the human realm. So now if we go to 358 in the glossary, we'll see about Maitreya. So Gunga, would you read that, please?
The Bodhisattva Maitreya is an important figure in many Buddhist traditions where he is unanimously regarded as the Buddha of the future era. He is said to currently reside in Tushita heaven as Shakyamuni's regent, where he awaits the proper time to take his final rebirth and become the fifth Buddha in the fortunate eon, reestablishing the Dharma in this world after the teachings of the current Buddha have disappeared. Within Mahayana Sutra, Maitreya is elevated to the same status as the other central bodhisattvas, such as Manjushri and Avalokiteshvara, and his name appears frequently in sutras either as the Buddha's interlocutor, maybe?
Interlocular.
That's what I want to say. As the teacher of the Dharma, Maitreya literally means loving one. He is also known as Ajita, meaning invincible.
Okay, so there's another several sutras, but here it's being specific about going to Maitreya's setting out, if to put it in context of his being in Tushita heaven and so on. So he is the future Buddha, and I'm curious. I have a real empathy for what Maitreya is, but I'd like to hear from you all what you think about it. Kongo, what does it mean to you? What does Maitreya mean to you?
I'm thinking. Well, it's interesting, to think about the future like that. In Zen, we talk about focusing more on the present and being mindful in the present moment, and to not spend too much time being lost in future projections, because the future is just a fantasy. You can only ever experience this present moment. So I guess I have mixed feelings about this idea of Maitreya. I mean, it's nice to think about the idea of there being another Buddha coming down into the future, um, and sort of that idea. I think of the heavens, even the heaven of joy. I think of, not quite as good as being on earth, right? Because it's always better to be reincarnated on earth, where you have just the right amount of suffering to work your way towards Buddhahood. If you're up in the heaven realm, everything's all great and you don't really have as much inspiration to practice. So maybe that's why the Buddha needs to come back down here to be reincarnated to really fulfill his role. That's all I really don't think too much about Maitreya, I guess.
Okay, thank you. Debbie, do you have a comment about Maitreya? What does it mean to you?
Well, a lot. When I first started looking at these things, I'd read about Maitreya, but one of the things that was, to me, one of the most important is he was a contemporary of Buddha Shakyamuni, and a lot of these people are, right? And this is something that's common in human cultures, that, gods are holy beings. A lot of them were actual people who over time gain the status. So I think a lot of these, you look at you look at sort of like books that explain things, they'll look at various people, Avalokiteshvara, and they thought existed, Manjushri, probably. But Maitreya was somebody who was a person like Ananda was. Ananda is a guy. He's very much a guy. He was not enlightened at all. And there are these people that were the close buddies. These were actual. Maitreya was an actual person, and at the time he was here, he was not enlightened. But it is said, written, that Buddha Shakyamuni said while he was alive that the next Buddha is going to be Maitreya. And so, to me, that's kind of amazing. Is it true? Objectively, I don't know. Does it make sense that he would be there to Tushita's heaven? I would have to say so. And so now I do think about him a lot, actually.
Okay, thank you. Alex, are you in a position to answer the question? You know, what do you, Maitreya, what does that mean to you? Alex, are you there? Well, he's not answering. So your microphone is muted if Alex, if you're trying to speak. But that's the only clue I'm going to give you. Maitreya to me, you know, as I was reading about Buddhism and reading about, you know, transcendence and things like that, before I really got into the Dharma itself, you know, before I found the teacher and everything. And I read about Maitreya and this prophecy that there would be, you know, this Buddha Maitreya that would come, you know, later on and so on. And as I thought about it, it occurred to me that what it was saying is that Buddhism is not a static philosophy. It is an evolving philosophy, the way I would look at it. So because of that, it gave me a sense that there is this contemporariness to it, that we're not locked into what was being said or taught, practiced 2,600 years ago, but that it would evolve as human beings evolve through their civilizations and cultures and so on. And so that gave me a real connection point to be able to say, well, this is something that changes. And I can appreciate that I've learned that, you know, there are core things that remain constant in all that change, but at the same time, it adapts itself to human beings. It's pliable enough for human beings to apply it to their current time, is I think the right way to say it. So when we talk about what we're trying to do now with Buddha practice study is Buddhism Dharma for 21st century minds. So we're relating it to the sophistication or whatever or experiences that we've had as human beings have had, you know, and bring it kind of up to date. And it hasn't lost any of its power, any of its relevancy, and so on like that. So whether it's in physical science, whether it's in psychology, whether it's in medicine, whether it's in spirituality, you know, the story has continued, and there's you know, you can really trace it and see that the things that were taught 2,600 years ago stand up to the test of time. And it goes to this notion that this is a human experience. All this is a human experience. It's not falling from the sky or anything like that. It's come out of the hearts and minds of human beings, and that to me is a wonderful thing to recognize and to be able to be part of that vibration that is still ringing with that vibration of human beings being in that. So that was an attempt to be able to explain what Maitreya means to me. I will say, you know, one other thing, and that is, I've said this before, it's if we all have a flashlight and we shine that flashlight on a spot on the wall, and we're all together in the same room, and we, with each of our flashlights, shine that flashlight onto the same spot, that as each one of us adds light to that, intensity to it, it becomes stronger and stronger and stronger. And so the energy that we have, that when we pass from this earthly existence that we have with this body and so on, but we release that spiritual energy, it's like that flashlight shining on that spot. And that we all together collectively coalesce as Buddha Maitreya. That great beings, you know, whether we like them or not, you know, who have a great life force, have that life force because there were many people who support them in prior lives. And so when they manifest in this way, we may not like them. We may not like what they say and what they do, but they are representative. They are symbolic. They are the embodiment of that coalescence of energy. And we can do the same thing with the spiritual energy of Maitreya. So that's how I look at it.
That's a beautiful way to put it.
So, brothers and sisters, as we are now, we will never be separated. We haven't been separated before. We continually won't be separated, but all for the sake of the spirituality, for the virtue. So, going back to the text, it says, he proclaims these words to the gods, abandon all forms of mindlessness. So the gods, so what are the gods? Who are the gods? So if we go to the glossary again, to 213, G213, we can define gods. So here's a nice long paragraph. So Kongo, would you mind reading that for us?
Cognate with the English term divine, the devas are most generally a class of celestial beings who frequently appear in Buddhist texts, often at the head of the assemblies of non-human beings who attend and celebrate the teachings of Shakyamuni and other Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. In Buddhist cosmology, the deva occupy the highest of the 5 or 6 destinies of samsara, among which beings take rebirth. The devas reside in the Devalakas heavens. They traditionally number between 26 and 28 and are divided between the desire realms, the material realms, and immaterial realms. A being attains rebirth among the devas either through meritorious deeds in the desire realm or the attainment of subtle meditative states in the material and immaterial realms. While rebirth among the devas is considered favorable, it is ultimately a transitory state which beings will fall when the conditions that lead to rebirth there are exhausted. Thus, rebirth in the God realms is regarded as a diversion from the spiritual path.
Okay, thank you. So, Kongo, what do you think of that? What do you think of the God beings and the rebirth in the God realms is regarded as a diversion from the spiritual path?
Yeah, I agree. I think of in our current society, we have beings who experience lives which we might think are divine. They have all the money they want. They live lives of luxury. They have no worries or cares. But they also have no inspiration to practice spiritually a lot of times. They're lost in diversion. They're lost in trying to just entertain themselves. There's that stereotype of the bored, wealthy child, doesn't know what to do with their life, ends up wasting it on intoxicants, can't really find any meaning in their life. And I think that's comparable to this godlike realm. That's like human beings experiencing that godlike realm here on earth. And that's, it's a difficult place to be if you can't find any meaning or purpose in your life.
Yes, thank you. Debbie, how about you? You want to speak on the topic of gods?
It's funny. I totally agree with what you said, Kunga. But what's interesting is that in this text, that's basically, we kind of look down on gods. We kind of look down on the gods just for that reason. That, with serious leisure fortune and very long lives, they take it as a sort of like an excuse to slide along for a few thousand years. But I was looking at this text, of course, before we were talking, and it's like, but this is a very different view. He's talking to these gods like it's funny, like they're the experts among gods, right? They're engaged with him. They're listening. He's teaching them. They are accepting that he is Lama, he's higher than they are. And that is interesting. And I don't know, it is a caste-based society. I don't know if that has anything to do with it. In the people who are writing this down, there would be that tension between the Buddhist view of the devas as not being the highest, as being maybe a little bit selfish, and their context of the Hindus who see them as Campbell was saying, on Friday, like beings that you can kind of cajole into doing the will. So it's not like I don't have an answer, but I find it fascinating because I totally agree with you. This is how we generally read them. But in this text that he's Buddha Shakyamuni is talking to them like they understand. Like they understand what he's saying, and that the ideas of throwaway mindlessness and distractions and you don't have a retinue, all these things, they're listening.
Thank you. Alex, are you with us now?
Yes, I'm listening carefully.
Oh, good. Well, I was asking you to speak before, but you were indisposed or something.
Yeah, that's some kind of connection to my headset.
I see.
Uh,
Would you
so
like to comment? Would you like to comment on gods and what that means to you?
yeah, like I was thinking about Maitreya, and I think there is like his name is mentioned in connection with prophecies that he will be also coming to set things right on earth or something like that. And well, there is part in me that saying, oh, maybe that will happen. There is part in me saying, oh, that may have already happened. Could it be that Jesus was Maitreya? That's why. But it doesn't really matter whether he's have been here or is coming. I think what's matter is like the ideal that we have in front of us as him as a leader, let's say. So it's great to have that sort of like ideal to aspire to. On the other hand, yes, I also agree with what Kunga was saying. We could view these people that in high elevated positions as the gods. We could also think of this as kind of like a microcosm within macrocosm. So like compared to regular mortal beings on earth, let's say, they are like gods compared to every possible human, on earth. Like if you talk about real gods, whether they live in the center of our galaxy or I don't know, on some super bright star or whatever. And I think in general, for our mind, it's healthy to contemplate these different elevated states of consciousness and what would happen if, yes, you kind of very refined, you very calm, peaceful, have everything you need, and then what would you do? You know, and I think that's important lesson, that we never really should stop growing. We should never stop our evolution. There is either a way to go up or a way to go down, you know. And for those gods that kind of lazy, yes, there is definitely a way to go down, and I think that's a big warning in that. And sometimes we ourselves find in this godlike state. It may not last very long, but oh, we feel everything is perfect, you know, and but it's not going to last for long. That's the truth. I think that's what this teaching is about.
Well, thank you. Okay. My comment is thinking about the gods as they're like control beings who have control of phenomenal nature, elements of it, the rain, thunder, wind, the crops, and human beings, beseeching these gods, oh, please, benefit me in some way, the god of fertility, bring me children, bring me grandchildren, god of wealth, bring me money, bring me prosperity, and so on. So how these beings got to be these gods is through the merit that they had gone through in previous lives and so on. And they, kind of, fit into some kind of a category or a pigeonhole, if you will, some kind of a, defined thing, but they find that in that way, they become very prideful of their own power. They start, they're full of self-aggrandizement. Oh, I've accomplished this, I've accomplished that. And I think what the bodhisattva is trying to say to them is, don't fall into these traps. You have great power, and don't fall into this. To be a human being, to be in the human realm, is to be able to help beings to recognize who they are and that they can fall into these traps and so on. So rather than you falling in this trap, remember that you're a human being and help human beings at that level, at that human level. Don't allow yourself to be trapped in that way. So maybe that's not completely thought out, but it's a direction for me to be able to say what people think of gods and what the gods think of themselves. So it's a interesting question. So he proclaims these words to the gods: abandon all forms of mindlessness. So what is this? So what does that mean? Abandon all forms of mindlessness. In other words, this self-aggrandizement, this wallowing in their own luxury and so on, their own pleasure, but to recognize mindfulness of the other realms, the all 6 realms, not just their realm, that there's 5 human realms. There's the demigod realm, there's the human realm itself, there's the animal realm and the hungry ghost realm and the hell realms. So to recognize mindfulness rather than abandon all that mindfulness and just be mindless, just seeking and wallowing in their own pleasure.
Yeah, I'm just looking through this. And we talk about this a lot. This is a sutra. This is free Mahayana. It doesn't reference directly the suffering of others.
It doesn't, the what?
Reference directly the suffering of others. It's not, it doesn't talk to bodhicitta. It's you're sort of exhorting these people to better themselves, these gods. Pay attention to what you're doing. Don't, this is the goal, but it doesn't say attend to the suffering of others. It says if you, it's a trap, you'll fall into the lower realms, and but it doesn't say
So go ahead and read the next stanza, because I think it goes to exactly what you're saying.
the multitude of divine pleasures, all wonderful things conjured up by the mind. All of this is caused by virtuous actions. So listen now to learn about these actions.
Continue on.
Acknowledge the kindness done to you. Do not fall back into the three lower realms. After exhausting your previous stores of merit, there is only unhappiness and suffering there. Once you develop respect for me, apply yourselves earnestly to practicing the teachings that you have heard, and you will inevitably attain boundless joy.
All right, so he says, once you develop respect for me.
I love that.
So what does that mean? Who's the me?
Respect for respect for, because he's always saying, he said on earth a lot of times, don't just do what I say. You have to examine. Developing respect for me is developing the understanding that he's right, that he's correct, that this is the path, this is what you should be doing. That you really need to stop playing around.
So of the bodhisattva.
Yes.
That is about to be incarnate.
Yes. Yes. You are going to come down. Why were you? And you are going to help me.
And this can be you.
Yes. Hopefully.
So if we say that the me is the bodhisattva, okay, then what does the bodhisattva mean? So if we go to 84 in the glossary, there's a nice stanza about who the bodhisattva is. So let me ask Kunga to read this, and then we'll come back and talk about this again. So once you develop respect for me, apply yourselves earnestly to practicing the teachings that you have heard, and you will inevitably attain boundless joy, which is one of the qualities of the bodhisattva. So, Kunga, would you recite that, please, the bodhisattva?
Sure. A being who is dedicated to the cultivation and fulfillment of the altruistic intention to attain perfect Buddhahood, traversing the 5 bodhisattva paths and 10 bodhisattva levels. Bodhisattvas purposely opt to remain within cyclic existence in order to liberate all sentient beings instead of simply seeking personal freedom from suffering. In terms of the view, they realize the 2 aspects of selflessness with respect to afflicted mental states and the nature of all phenomena. In this text, here Bodhisattva is also used to refer specifically to the Buddha prior to his awakening, both during this life as Prince Siddhartha and during his previous life as Savatakatu in the Heaven of Joy.
Okay. So going back to the first couple sentences of this paragraph, it says, traversing the 5 bodhisattva paths and the 10 bodhisattva levels. So these bodhisattva paths, so what does that make you think of? What are the 5 bodhisattva paths, would you say?
Is that referring to the 5 Buddha families?
Well, maybe. What about the Mahayana, excuse me, the Mahamudra, the 5 paths to the Mahamudra. This being a Mahayana text, and the Mahamudra is a focus of that. So the path of accumulation, the path of application, the path of insight, the path of meditation, and the path of dedication, of realization. So while you're on that path as a bodhisattva, then the 10 bodhisattva levels, which apply to each one of those 5 paths. We can see that there's a matrix there, and that each one is interlocked with the other ones. One is not exclusive, following linearly, from one to another, that there is a matrix there. It says bodhisattvas purposefully opt to remain within cyclic existence in order to liberate all sentient beings, instead of simply seeking personal freedom from suffering. So, going back to the text of the sutra, it says, once you develop respect for me, the bodhisattva, apply yourselves earnestly to practicing the teachings that you have heard, and you will inevitably gain boundless joy. So, does this joy supersede their pleasures? That their self-aggrandizement of pleasures, that as gods, that they temporarily find happiness in.
That's where the respect comes in, doesn't it? It's work. It's work for them. It's work for us. You gotta destroy your ego. There's no way around it.
Conga, what do you think about this?
I think that if the gods were enlightened, they would be bodhisattvas on earth practicing. So that's why he's teaching them, right? Because it's just, if you've reached enlightenment, then you realize that you're interconnected with all beings, and you would have no wish for you would see that there is no distinction between your own happiness and the happiness of all beings. So you would naturally dedicate yourself to continued relief of suffering for all beings, because you realize there is no distinction between you and all beings. So it's cyclic. There is no separate, the whole idea that you have a separate existence aside from all other beings is just an illusion. So once you discover that, you would naturally continually dedicate yourself to the endless joy of helping eliminate suffering for all beings.
So would you say that, we talk about the 8 great bodhisattvas, and one is of cultivation, another one is of loving kindness, another one is of transformation, and so on. One's compassion, one's purification, one is wisdom, and so on. So these 8 great bodhisattvas, which are like the epitome of human qualities and so on. So this bodhisattva, to become Shakyamuni, to become Buddha Shakyamuni, I think of him as the bodhisattva of true nature, that encompasses all those things, but at the same time, being able to recognize and be able to be the embodiment of ultimate nature, true nature, the embodiment of all of that, beyond words. Alex, you have any thought about this?
Yeah, this is a interesting turn. This is conversation taking. It's also a natural one. I think. So when we, yes. So what I was saying, yes, the gods cannot forever remain in the same state, and the reason why they called, I think, the Buddha is saying that they need to take mindful path as opposed to mindless path, because many of those gods, according to the lore, Buddhist lore, they shut their mind off, because if your minds keep running around, eventually it runs itself into trouble. So they kind of like blank their mind, turn their mind off so that they can not exhaust whatever their karma, or they like disconnect from the world, so remain instead of this God state, and not to uh, uh, not to go down, so not to sort of like be polluted with the lower realms and all that. But the wisdom from Buddha is that well, it may work for some time, but eventually it will still come to hunt them down. Gradually the good karma decreases, and they have to deal with the previously accumulated whatever bad karma. So in best is not to sit idle or like turn their mind blank, but in mindless meditation, best is actually to engage and do something good to accumulate good merit, and that is bodhisattva's path. So although and another aspect of it, I think this also kind of a teaching to the kings and like very powerful people who almost think of themselves as gods on earth. And some of them may think, oh, who is that Buddha? What is why do I follow to his teachings, and why why should I listen to him? And here is like a story that even gods listen to them. He even teaches gods above human realm what best to do, and so it's kind of like a way of indirectly imparting and inspiring every person of every status, no matter how high they are on earth, inspire those people to step on bodhisattva's path and do active good instead of just enjoying their current state. That's
Very good. Thank you.
I'm taking.
Do you have your book with you? Can you read the next two stanzas, 4.40 and 4.41?
Sorry, not today.
Can I interject?
Sure, please.
Okay. So 4.37, when he starts out saying that the multitude of divine pleasures, all wonderful things conjured up by the mind, all of this is caused by virtuous action. So listen now to learn about these actions. I kind of feel like it's a bribe to the gods, like, hey, you're really enjoying the good life here now, and I'm going to tell you why you're enjoying it. So it's kind of like, directly to the listeners there who are enjoying this godlike realm, this is why you should listen to me. And then in the next one, acknowledge the kindness done to you, do not fall back into the three lower realms. And it made me think about, the causes and conditions that allow us this situation we have where we can listen to the karma, and to just always be aware and acknowledge that, that this is a fortunate human birth. That's what we say, right? So just that acknowledgement of the fortunate human birth. So yeah, this, you have all this great things, this is how you got it. But then here, before we go any further, let me tell you, it's not all your fault, right? Part of this comes from the kindness of others. This is from your parent. You wouldn't be here without your parents. You wouldn't be here without your grandparents, and all these people and teachers and all these things that were part of your life. So and then that last part, after exhausting your previous stores of merit, there is only unhappiness and suffering there. So it's like, here, listen to me, because I'm telling you how you have everything is so great, and this is all caused by virtuous action. But also remember that all this merit you've accumulated, all these things are all impermanent. They're all going to go to waste. So it's important to know, how to live your life, because you're going to have to deal with that kind of thing, that kind of feelings going forward. Thank you.
Well, that's great. And thank you for circling back on that. And that's why I think it's so wonderful to have these kind of group discussions, because, you new to go back and do that. So that's really good. You're absolutely right about all that. Yes. Yeah, so as when we study these things, it's just not reading it and it's trying to extract the meanings out of it. And each time you read it, you get a little bit more out of it, and you find the interconnection of all these different phrases and terms and stanzas and ideas and so on like that. So, yes, very good. All right, can we move to the next to 4.40 and 4.41? So, Konga, would you read those, please?
All desirable things are impermanent and unstable. Nothing is eternal, not even the eons. Everything is like a mirage or an illusion and is fleeting as lightning or a water bubble. The pleasures brought about the qualities of desirable things is as unsatisfying as drinking salt water. But those with noble, pristine knowledge that transcend the world are satisfied.
Okay.
You don't,
So, I'm sorry, were you going to say something?
I just wasn't sure where to stop.
Yeah, I wanted to stop right there. So, how would you describe, and anybody jump in, when it's talking about all desirable things are impermanent and unstable and so on, um, can you put that into, some, single word or a phrase or a concept that kind of gives a little bit more understanding to what's being said there? Is it
I
saying
think,
that all these things are phenomenal nature and are empty? It's all emptiness is what's being described here. The emptiness of phenomenal nature, where all these desirable things are.
yeah, and it's another good reminder for the gods who he's talking about who are getting all their desires met all the time without very much effort, and that, but even they are aware that, they're going to live a really long time, but they're still only going to live for 1,000 or so years, and they're going to be going back into the cycle of existence just like everyone else.
Yes. Debbie?
Sorry, I'm just coughing a lung out. I was thinking about this earlier. There are things that are more difficult because of modern life, and there are things that are slightly easier. And I'm not going to say that I understand emptiness or you inherently do understand emptiness, but at the time when these were written, these people had no access to the Twilight Zone or the Matrix, or, modern people, I think, are more easily able to see the idea that this is all like a magician's illusion, that it's, it may not inherently be real. We've been exposed to that idea through our own culture and through media. And, Matrix is a great example. And people are talking, and Buddhists are talking, if people are talking about Buddhism, they talk about that a lot because, the Matrix was computers doing it. There's no agent. It's not like a god or somebody or some being or something like that is making the world an illusion. But the idea that we can look around and see everything as impermanent, as in unreal and in an important sense, and unenduring, so that, we are here in this place at this time, but if we are moving through beginningless time, it makes sense that everything here is an illusion. It's totally impermanent. Where are you going to be in 20 billion years? I think that is something that might have been a little harder to take, when you lived in a world where things seemed to be more durable. You completely understood the seasons, and you know, the passing of the years and the passing of millennia, and Hinduism had these incredibly long time scales and the idea of impermanence. So
Well, I think it's interesting you brought up the word agent. And, you know, the thought that I had before you brought that up was, well, is this leading to some kind of a, you know, supreme creator or something like that? You know, this agent, you know, who brought all this forward? But, you know, when we learned that the agent really is our own mind,
yeah,
and
yeah,
and that collectively we have, you know, created these conventions that we agree upon, including these philosophical, spiritual notions and concepts. So, you know, the agent is the human mind. You know, do these things really exist? You know, they exist in our mind, but beyond our mind. So then the next line is on 4.41. It says, "But those with noble, pristine knowledge that transcends the world are satisfied." So who are those? What does that mean? So that pristine knowledge means that it's unspoiled. It's completely pure. It hasn't been born. When something is born, inherently there is a confusion that comes along with it. There is imputed prints on it, you know, and so the clear light is another way of saying this pristine knowledge that we all have within ourselves, but it's blocked up, you know, by our intellectual mind that is creating all these obstacles and so on. So it says that this pristine knowledge, this clear light that transcends the world, are satisfied. So in other words, we have this potential to be able to release all this suffering thoughts, mental activity, all these all these desirable things that are just whirlpools that we get pulled down into.
then it's like that horror movie trope. The phone call is coming from within the house. It's like your tormentor is coming from within your own mind.
Yeah.
And I just want to interject that we use we are using words like tormentor and illusions, but really it's a neutral thing. You know, we're human beings. You know, we have sense organs. Our mind is just another sense organ. They enable us to interact in the world in a certain way. It's not negative. It just has limits, and it's just recognizing the limits on your perception of reality. I mean, it's not something you have to beat yourself up about or consider your mind as being sinful. You know, it's just a way that things work. Um, and just to acknowledge that and to try and look beyond that, um, I think is the spiritual path that we're on. But I don't necessarily think holding on to these feelings like, oh, you know, I have to fight against my mind, or my mind's feeding me all these delusions. Ego is such an awful thing. Really, you know, it's just part of your anatomy of being a human being. You know, I mean, there's a lot of advantages to being a human being over being an animal with a lower conscious level or being a plant. But there are disadvantages too, right? Maybe the plants are a lot more peaceful because their conscious is not quite as activated with all their thoughts. But you know, we have to interact with the world from where we are. Um, but I don't necessarily think it's not helpful for me to think about I have to have these innate impulses that are negative. Like I think that they exist because of evolution, right? That just the way human beings developed from a single cell organism to a multi-cell organism, you know, created a way for my mind to work in a certain manner. And just understanding that that's different from I'm limited by that reality, but I can maybe question that reality, and by questioning that reality, it's going to help me reduce my suffering for myself and can reduce the suffering for others as well. I think that's where it becomes more helpful to me.
You're hitting them out of the park today. That's that was a beautiful way to put it. I think, yeah, definitely put it into perspective.
Alex, you got any comment?
Well, I don't know what I can add to what I already said. To
Well, I wondered if you had any comment about, pristine knowledge. You know,
pristine knowledge. Oh, yes, yes, yes. So, yes, sometimes I maybe we could think of the if you know about yoga and something, generally it's divided in two main parts: this phenomenal yoga and non-phenomenal yoga, or primordial yoga. So one is sort of like conditional. It's kind of like common wisdom, so to speak, and the other is kind of more absolute in nature, right? So not depending on who said what or what happened. It's just from the nature itself, the natural way of things are and the way things go. So I think this pristine knowledge is bringing into awareness the path and wisdom that kind of Buddha is trying to impart, how things are naturally supposed to be and how they normally go, and absorbing that and putting that into action. So just another qualifier to what has been said, that this is not politics. This is not some dogma. This, like bodhisattva path, what we're talking about before. This is the natural things evolve. You go either one way or the other way. Either up or down. What else there can be, right? So and the fact that it's coming from the Buddha, that brings, if we examine it, accept it, verify it for ourselves, that is bringing more respect to the source, the Buddha, and so that we also receptive to further or more deeper teachings that are there. That's what I take with that.
Very good. Thank you. So I think this is great. Like I said, we're all talking about this, and it's creating, I think, critical thinking on our behalf, and to understand what it is more to be a human being, and to hear our own wheels kind of turning around, trying to understand this. Not that we are going to come to definitive answers right now, but I think it's very good to be able to engage in the conversation rather than some kind of a unidirectional lecture. I think 21st century minds needs this kind of self discourse. We're already to be involved in this conversation means that we have come through a lot of evolution to get to this. A lot of past lives and so on like that, and in this human condition, and so we may only have what we might consider to be a few lives left or something, before we can, become that embodiment of Maitreya Buddha. And these are just conceptual ways of saying this, but I find this to be very healthy and refreshing. So, Debbie, would you read 4.42 and 4.43, please?
Sure. Goddesses, companions, and beautiful songs are like the audience of a play. They are like a crowd of people who assemble and then go their own separate ways. In the realm of the conditioned, there are no allies, no friends, no relatives, no retinue. And besides, the karma that results from good deeds also binds one and ever follows behind one's back.
Okay.
Yeah, that's a lot.
So just to give a definition, briefly, the goddesses are I think in this sense are adored women. Those who, have, supernatural powers. We pray to them or whatever, or they're just, women that are just luxurious and wonderful, and we wish to be like them and to be our companions who sing beautiful songs, are like the audience of a play. We're listening to this, but we're interpreting it in a way that makes us like a goddess, like or there's companions, there's other goddesses, there's other songs that we come together and sing. We become the choir in the play or something like that. They are like a crowd of people who assemble and then go their own separate ways. So, for this time being, we come into this conventionality of expressing ourselves, thinking about this, but then we all go home and develop our own, psychosis of one type or another. And the
Or we
next,
could even think of our human body as a bunch of companions, goddesses, and songs coming together for this brief life. And then as soon as this life is over, everything goes their own separate ways again.
that's a very good way to describe it, sure.
That's what I was thinking about these sections. It's just reminding us of, everything is impermanent. The people we see, the desires that we have, none of those things are going to satisfy us forever. There's that idea that they're like salt water. They taste good when we're really thirsty, but over time they make us sick, or maybe we could just say over time we get sick, and get old and we die. And everything that we use and everything we get desire from has to go through that same pattern as we do, because everything is impermanent. And I just keep thinking about his audience there as being these gods who are living really long lives and indulging in all their pleasures. And he's just trying to kind of shake them, pay attention. This is not going to last. You've had a good life, you're enjoying all these things, but it's only temporal. It's going to last you for thousands of years, but then in the end, you're going to be in the same place as everyone there on earth. And you need to be thinking about that. So if they're smart enough to be here listening to the Buddha talk and thinking about a spiritual path despite all these distractions, but he still feels like the need to encourage them to, keep going, keep practicing. Maybe he's like, I'm leaving, now you're on your own, you got to do it for yourself. And there's going to be all these distractions. So here, remember these things after I'm gone, that kind of thing. Thank you.
Yeah, so then the next stanza, it says, in the realm of the conditioned, there are no allies, no friends, no relatives, no retinue. So what is the realm of the conditioned?
That's our realm.
Well, we're in now. It's the opposite of pristine.
But there's no allies, there's no friends in this realm?
Those
Well,
are just names, right? Labels.
Yeah, well, and ultimately, no, that's in a lot of texts, right? Friends will meet and then they'll part. Everything is impermanent. You do have no retinue. You have one now. In lifetimes, no. Help they can't help you when you die, as you live, and when you die, they can't help you transcend your stuckness, all the, spider webs and things that are of karma, of, ignorance, of whatever you're carrying around in your mind. They cannot help you.
So then the next two lines, it says, and besides, the karma that results from good deeds also binds one and never follows behind one's back. So
I
what
read
does that
that and
mean?
I thought, when you first read it, I thought, oh, that's negative. But then he goes on to tell you how you should be harmonious. Because of that, you should be harmonious with others and act with loving and beneficial mind and engage in wholesome activities. So it's okay to be bound by good karma. This is the impression I get. That's all right. All karma is going to bind you, and if you're going to be bound by good karma, that's okay. That's what you should do.
I think what it's saying is beware, good karma is a trap. And and maybe it's putting the cart before the horse, because we haven't talked about this, or in this sutra it hasn't talked about this, but it hasn't talked about the 12 interdependent origination, the 12 links. It hasn't talked about the bardos, the 6 bardos, and so on. So, I immediately, jump to that and say, okay, well, how does this fit in with that? But then you just, very well, Debbie just said, this relates to the bardo of living, and we don't have to go into anything else besides that right now. But the point is, my overarching point is to say that there's good karma and there's bad karma, and both become attachments, both become sources of clinging and so on. And we have to beware of that. And ultimately what we need to do is to transcend any attachment or any aversion to that karma.
Well,
We have to empty the bag. It says ever follows behind one's back. So if the back is like got this big bag of all the results of all the karma, you've got to be able to get rid of that bag altogether.
well,
That sounds like mental baggage.
it does.
Go
But
ahead, go ahead, Debbie.
Oh, I'm sorry to interrupt, but you said that you talked about that before. The good karma got you to the God realm. You made that point before, Lance.
Yeah, but it may not necessarily be good. It was good karma, but you get attached to it. You get pridefulness out of it. And you ignore the suffering of others. So that good karma got you to a very nice place, but you took advantage of it and didn't help anybody with it, and ultimately crashed to the lower realms.
One thing that is interesting, and this might have nothing to do with it, is 4.35. There's always numbers, but we say months. When the bodhisattva was finished, 84,000 of the gods were able to attain, pure enlightenment. And then the 32,000 gods and the million gods. And it's interesting. It makes me wonder, is he talking to everybody, or is he talking to the people who haven't achieved, is it had anything to do with the fact that it's not that they're unconvinced, but they're the gods who are, kind of still exhorting the gods that are left to be better about things.
Well, I think he's talking to that part of human nature that is in the God realm, that thinks it's God's in the God realm. So it's a metaphor.
Yes, it's definitely a metaphor, but it just makes me wonder, like, is this just for a selected group of people who are still sort of clinging on to, oh, I have this great life because I was wonderful in the past.
Well, yeah, I think so. And what's he trying to do? He's trying to guide them to be born as a human being, because that's where they can find the Dharma and be able to liberate themselves from this, you know, this migration that they're always on, this wheel of migration that they're always on. We talk about all migrating beings, you know, they're stuck on this wheel and so on.
I wanted to say what when you were talking about the idea of the karma that binds you. It just I guess all karma can be corrupted by your ego, right? So no matter what, if you can be out there doing really great things, and that's wonderful. Nothing bad about doing great things, but when you start to do the great things because you think about how it's making you look like a great person, then that's how the ego starts to be involved in there, and starts to become prideful and create problems for you later. So I think that when he's talking about in the next line, he says, be harmonious with others, act with loving and benevolent mind, engage in wholesome activities. He's talking about ways of acting that are without this ego involvement. In the Diamond Sutra, he talks about, helping beings, even though you realize there are no beings, and being generous to beings, even realize there is no generosity. And just this idea of not being attached to what we think of the benefits of our actions will be, but just engaging in the actions, because the actions are important themselves. So as long as you're engaging in the action of eliminating suffering for other beings, and that's the only reason you're doing it, is because you're interconnected with those other beings, and helping those other beings is helping a part of yourself or helping yourself. That's good. That's appropriate. But if you start to think about, I'm going to do this because then so-and-so is going to think a lot of me, and now I'm going to be thought of as a better person, or I'm going to do this because eventually, I'm going to get good karma and I'll end up in the God realm. Well, then those will be where the karma starts to bind you in negative ways.
Yeah, so the Bardo teachings, speaks about this, so you can understand, that where he is now, he's in what the Toshita heaven will be part of the Bardo of reality. So we're in the Bardo of living. We then go through the Bardo of death. And then from on the other side of Bardo of death is what's always talked about, the afterlife or something like that, which in Buddhism is talked about as the Bardo of reality, where it's just pure spirit. And you determine, or that energy that you are, either is like a leaf in the wind, and the wind is the karma. But if there's no karma, there's no wind, and you remain in that bardo of reality. You remain as a Buddha, completely enlightened, completely liberated, and unaffected by any conditioning or causes. So it's like, figuratively, it's like the sun, that's just radiating for the benefit of all and so on. But for those beings, for two major reasons, need to be reborn. They got to have a body again, either because they can't deal with the terror of that freedom. They're unprepared to be in that egolessness, and they need to have a body. So they want to be born again. Or the second reason that they will be born is that they are such a high level that they need to help other beings, that they want to be born. They need to be born as a bodhisattva in order to help other beings, because they have postponed their enlightenment, their final enlightenment, for the sake of helping other beings. So they need to be reborn again themselves. And in the process of that, whatever, remainder of karma that is there gets purified in that process, but for the benefit of other beings in order to be able to continue to teach them and so on. So I think that's the space, that's the element that we're talking about here. So if there's no karma, there's no need to be reborn. So it begs the question, do the Buddhas have karma? Have they transcended the causes and conditions of karma and ultimately the results of karma? So this was a question. This is an age-old question that generations of monastics have debated upon. Does the Buddha have karma? So in the Jewel Ornamental Liberation, it's explained, it's talked about in the four opinions of the Buddha's primordial wisdom. So this is in I think this is in chapter 21 of the Jewel Ornamental Liberation. So with all this discussion back and forth, they finally get to Milarepa, and they ask Milarepa, well, what do you think? Does the Buddha have karma? And he says, Buddha is beyond words and conceptual thoughts, such as the existence or non-existence, eternalism or nihilism, and so forth. It will not be contradicted whatever name is used to express it. Dharmakaya is beyond conception, unborn, free from elaboration. He says, don't look at me, don't ask me about whether the Buddha has karma or not. Look at your own mind. So that's, I think, the point I was trying to make earlier, that we're developing this critical thinking. And, there comes a point where we, figuratively either hit a wall or pass through the wall or hit the ceiling and pass through the ceiling. And then everything, all the stuff that we brought to that aperture is just left behind. So this instruction that we're reading in the sutra is for those who are coming back into the human realm. So it's directing himself, maybe he's hearing himself speak, thinking out loud, so to speak, but talking to the gods to prepare themselves to coming back into the body and to find a suitable life that is maybe other than what they've been experiencing as the gods. In other words, to become a human being.
And we can just take this, and apply this to ourselves every new moment of our life.
Exactly.
Yeah. I mean, we don't have to wait till we die to
Exactly
discover that then we can make the next moment a more compassionate one than the last.
So what does 4.45 say? Read that.
Please recall the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, and do not slip into heedlessness. Those who delight in study, discipline, and generosity are endowed with patience and gentleness.
Continue.
Investigate suffering, impermanence, and lack of self. Examine these three phenomena thoroughly. They occur in connection to causes and conditions. They are void of life and have no owner.
Yes, so that's exactly what you were saying. You know, we're coming back into this, and here are some tools for you. You know, the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. You know, don't slip into carelessness. It's real easy to get lazy.
You study, discipline, generosity, patience, gentleness, and then the next few verses. Oh, it sound like a lot like the six paramitas. Conscientiousness, generosity, restraint, self-control, study. Right?
Yeah, what's 4.47 say?
Whatever miraculous powers you see in me, and whatever eloquence, wisdom, and qualities I may have, all of this is caused by virtuous deeds arising from study, discipline, and conscientiousness.
Right. So it's a choice to do these things. You know, we've chosen this path ourselves. You know, we're together in this.
Right? For the welfare, benefit, and love of sentient beings. Love of sentient beings, right? That's really, when you get that motivation, it's not just renunciation. And it is working for the benefit of all beings. You should emulate me with your discipline, study, conscientiousness, generosity, restraint, and self-control. For you will not be able to accomplish the auspicious teachings by the mere sound of your voice and speech. Please adopt the right conduct and practice what you preach. Again, the Eightfold Path.
Right.
Mhm.
Right. So the analogy of the lotus, you know, that we come from defilement,
Or
but out of that defilement we arise through um, the samsara, the suffering of samsara, and then come out into nirvana and blossom as this flower. But we have to maintain that flower, because that is another metaphor. It's another concept, and is subject to the faults of samsara.
Well, just remember that the fault of samsara, without the fault of samsara, you can never be a Buddha.
Well, that's
And
true.
without the mud of the lotus could not live. So
Well,
I would challenge calling it a defilement, because you have to have it in order to, you need the nutrition.
we could say that of our limited point of view, we could say that, you know, that's true, that we have to be human to be able to experience this. But, you know, there are those who are born on the pistil of a lotus, you know, who skip all this. But, you know, maybe behind them, you don't know what lives they went through before and so on like that. So it just becomes a play, all these possibilities.
I like the idea that samsara is nirvana, that there is not, you can't have one without the other. We talk
Right.
about, I think, a little bit about, two sides of a coin,
Two
that they're
sides of the same hand.
interpenetrating with each other, that we can see samsara without saying it is bad, or we can just say samsara is impermanent. Samsara causes suffering, and it doesn't. We don't have to make a judgment call on samsara.
Right.
So without samsara, how can we have our human life?
Well, exactly. And I would have to say that, you know, the four of us who are present right now, I think it's safe to say that we've all had a pretty good life.
balance, yes.
You know, we're very fortunate. And why? Because we've done good things, and we have good merit, and so on like that. It's up to us now to sustain that and to not allow ourselves to fall backwards, and to use it as a springboard, you know, to continue for the benefit of others, that others may find this for themselves, you know, for its own sake.
Yeah.
I mean, and keep the ego out of it.
One thing to remember, that I remember sometimes, is that my fortunate existence here is a result of good karma from my ancestors, But also a lot of the misery I'm seeing around me is also a result of my ancestors too. A lot of the bad karma I see is my own karma. And that, you know, sure, I've done it, I must have some good karma. I have this good fortunate situation, but also there's a lot of negative things in the world, and that's related to my karma as well.
That to me connotes that, you've got a serial number and you got a model number, that there is a uniqueness to each one of us. And I look at it more as a transpersonal, that all this experience is transpersonal. Our past is transpersonal, and that's how we identify with past lives. Maybe I'm missing the point. But this is something I've been thinking about for years and years and years, and I still can't. Maybe I just haven't had that kind of transcendent experience where I can say who I was in the year 1850 or something like that to convince me that there is this thread, that there is this, model number and this serial number that was printed, way back in the year dot. And it continues. I think to look at it that way, to me, becomes an egocentric thing.
I'm not looking at it like that. So if I trace my ancestors back to my parents, to my grandparents, as I look up my family tree, it's more and more people, right? More and more people. And we're going back in time, right? And those people, as we go farther back in time, people have more and more shared commonalities, right? The farther we go back, the more genetic heritage we share, right? Because we have common ancestors, right? So when we get back, as we go farther and back, we know there's a lot more people in the world than there was 2,000 years ago, right? So 2,000 years ago, we were a much closer family. And if we think about those interaction of those people and all the effects of on the world, as time progressed, those effects spread out like an explosion spins out waves of energy, right? And here we are in the future, we're still experiencing waves of energy from things that happened way in the past, but we're connected to that action that started out from the past, right? Because we didn't appear out of nothingness. We're dependent on the genetic heritage of our ancestors. That's what I'm trying to say.
Well, I understand that, and it's something to talk about. But is your genetic family heritage the same as the one that I had or the one that Debbie had? Similar in its nature? Or is
as
it
we go back farther in time, they become closer and closer, right? And if you get all the way back to we all came from cells coming out of the ocean, we're all from the same organic body, evolutionary.
How about that we all came from the same energy?
Sure, if you went, yeah, you're eventually, right? Big bang somewhere.
And then you slow the energy down enough, and then all of a sudden matter pops up, right?
Yeah, you can go back as far as you can go back.
Yeah.
I mean, there's no single point that all this started.
And that's
but certainly the farther we go back, the closer we all become together.
And that's referred to as the birthlessness. And for us to try and qualify the birth becomes an egocentric, device. That's the way
I don't know what you mean when you say qualify the birth.
Where we try and find, well, where did my humanness come from? Where did I become a physical being? And who's my family of that happening?
You mean trace the actual specific points of karma that led to you?
Something like that. I mean, I'm trying to use your example and say, that there is this family, there is this family tree, if you will.
I think it's impossible to trace trace the karma. What did the Buddha said? If you try to understand all the intricacies of karma, your head will explode.
Well, that's my point. That's exactly my point. And you know, so I don't look at it that way. You know, that's what I'm trying to say. You know, to trace your prior lives or something like that. We all had those prior lives.
I'm just trying to balance the I must have had good karma because I have this situation here where I'm able to learn the Dharma. But I just want to balance that with I have bad karma too. That's why there's so much suffering in the world.
But is it
And I'm
yours?
just balancing the two.
But is it your karma?
Sure.
Yeah.
Who else could it be?
Well,
It's yours too.
or do we claim it as ours? Do we claim it as ours, and then that becomes the attachment and the aversions? Because I don't want that karma, but I'll take this karma.
Well, if you claim it all as yours, good or bad, then it's hard to attach to any of it because you've claimed it all.
Well, then that's
I
the
guess that's what I'm saying.
birthlessness. That's the birthlessness.
Sure,
That's the liberation.
sure.
And therefore, you don't have to think about, you know, that which was or what you thought it might have been. You know, you take that off your plate. You don't have to worry. You don't have to think about it anymore. You just liberated a whole realm of concept. You're that much closer to being a Buddha.
I think it helped motivate you to relieve the suffering of people if you remember that you have some connections with them, you know, that they're not in that situation just because of, you know, oh, they're a bad person or they have bad karma, that their karma and your karma is interpenetrating.
Well, and that becomes the dialogue that we create as teachers and you know, recipients of teachings and so on. But it's a conversation. You know, it's a intellectual tool.
Well,
Is it absolute or is it relative?
Which part?
Any part, but the part that you're talking about.
Well, since we're talking about it, we'll say it's relative because if it was absolute, we couldn't talk about it.
We wouldn't have to talk about it.
Exactly.
I think thinking about that karma can be kind of a trap. We've attended a lot of teachings. I've attended a lot of teachings. I don't know how many hours. I don't know how many teachings. And when somebody starts talking about karma, people have an hour of questions about these very specific points of karma. And, you know, the monks and nuns the teachers will always answer them. But I think it always is like, almost some of it is like bargaining. Does this count? Think about it, you know, like, and then, you know, the thing that's always near to my heart, which is, you know, your karma brought you to a place that you can suffer. And some people are like, oh, you can't interfere with this person's suffering because it's their karma, which is not a Vajrayana way of thinking about it. Because, all right, in my view of it, what people call bad karma is you running around in however many incarnations doing things that are directly counter to what you really are, right? And we look at things like violence and pettiness and negative emotions, you know, being angry and not hurting someone is great in terms of, well, you didn't hurt that person, but anger, the Dalai Lama said, it's like, you don't get punished from your anger. Your anger is your punishment. Sitting there in anger is taking you further away from what you are. So you're causing this temporary like bruising to what you are. And then as we, cascade through lifetimes, that's what we're carrying around. Not like this list of things that I've done in the last, I don't know, 2 billion years that, if I've been on Earth, wherever I've been, right? If I've been on Earth, we've had life here for like 2 billion years. So if I was stuck here on Earth and I'm cycling through whatever, I was a lot of things. I was, little one-celled animals. I was jawless fishes. I was daisies. I was whatever. And the life that I'm now is, as I cascaded from death to part of reality to where I am now, I'm carrying that with me. It's that confusion. It's like that jewel in the mud thing. I am a jewel.
Well, it's like the 8 worldly concerns,
Yeah.
praise and blame. We're looking for something that we can praise ourselves, or we're looking for something that we can blame for
Yeah.
who I am.
Yeah. So that's what I mean by it's a trap. It's like the whole, you're in Vajrayana, right? So we all started with Vajrasattva, which is purification. The whole point of Vajrasattva is we are like, this has to stop. And you get these very practical tools for purification, for saying, okay, I'm taking control of my life. I'm taking control of my mistakes. I'm moving forward from that, right? If you can attain enlightenment in one lifetime, it's a lot of work, but you don't like, if for whatever reason, Hitler, I don't know, was like a bug for a whole bunch of time and now he's a human being. And if he figures out how to be enlightened in one lifetime, then that's fantastic. He deserves, right? That's what we want. We don't want him punished. We don't want him to come back again and punish other people. My family resisted the Nazis, so we have this thing about Hitler. If Hitler can be enlightened, if there's anything I can do to take that being and make him enlightened in whatever form, that's a win. So I think that karma is, you have to look forward. This is what I'm carrying around. This is what I have to get rid of. This is what I have to see through. When I die, I have plans. I do not want to just like spin into a whirlpool and not know what's going on and just take some random bird. I have plans. So
what's your point of view?
my point of view is, it's a good question.
Is it the point of view of a bodhisattva? Is it the point of view of a human being? Is it the point of view of a Buddha? What point of view is that?
I am a human being who wants to be a bodhisattva. I have these fantastic examples around me. I have fantastic examples of bodhicitta, of, theory, study, practice, application to every stupid part of your life. And that is my goal. Right? And when we say the prayer to be bored and Danwichin, I take it very seriously. And yeah, so that's my goal. And I don't want to get stuck on, all the stupid things that I've done in this lifetime. All the stupid things I will continue to do in this lifetime. I'm trying to plow through that.
All right. Well,
That's just
thank you. It's past 9 o'clock, and I think we should wrap this up, but I think we should wrap it up by reciting the rest of these verses again, just the ones that we haven't talked about. And maybe it becomes, an investigation we all interact in. If you want to engage in another conversation, we can certainly do that. But I think we need to bring this to an end. So if you don't mind, I'll read the last few verses. So 4.50, it says, "Do not simply follow what other people say. Exert yourself with continuous concentration. When acting, one takes the opportunity. Without acting, one does not accomplish anything." So let me say, this acting is the role play. What's the highest role that we can take is as a deity. And if we follow the deity yoga, if we engage in deity yoga, that's the highest act that we can do. And the more that we do that act, the more we become the actor. And that's the point of the deity yoga. To help us to see that, then there becomes this threshold that we're able to cross over, and then we truly become the deity, and we see that we're all those deities. The only thing that's different is the activity in which that the deity is engaged in. So when acting, one takes the opportunity. Without acting, one does not accomplish anything. So being on the Dharma path is being in that fivefold path, is the path of application, is the path of becoming the deity. So the next one says, "Recall all the suffering you have experienced." This is what we've been talking about, circling through cyclic existence until now. If you fall prey to distortions, nirvana and freedom from attachment will not be achieved. What are the distortions? The distortions are the misinterpretations. So why play that game? We're just going to screw it up no matter what. It's going to get distorted somehow. So don't play the game. Next one is, "Therefore, having now obtained freedom." Whoa, now I don't have to play the game. Now I'm free. A spiritual guide and a conducive environment. And having met with the superior teachings of the Dharma, you should pacify attachment and the other afflictions. So there you are, in your own home, that you have attained a freedom. It's in your mind, and your big mind and your little mind have come together, and there's a freedom there. And the spiritual guide, all these books, the gurus, the teachers, but the guru within yourself. And a conducive environment, that you have a holy place, a Buddha field that you are able to manage for yourself. You see it all as a Buddha field. And having met with the superior teaching of the Dharma, the superior teaching of the Dharma would have to mean, this path to liberation and so on. And then freed from pride, arrogance, and conceit that we've been talking about, always flexible, upright, and honest. Dedicate yourself to reaching the transcendence of suffering, reaching the transcendence that we have gone beyond suffering, and apply yourself to realizing the path. I make the choice to do this. Disperse all the darkness and turbidity of ignorance. The turbidity is the cloudiness of ignorance with the lamp of knowledge. The lamp of knowledge sees the relative and illuminates the relative and illuminates the absolute that is all around us. And tear the net of error with its latencies. The net of error, its latencies are the inactivities. Something that's is latent is inactive. Using the Vajra of wisdom, the indestructible Vajra of wisdom. So our brain is constantly going, so we want to feed our brain on healthy, virtuous thoughts for the benefit of others. What need is there to say many things? It is in your interest to follow this teaching. If you do not abide by this teaching, it's not the fault of the teaching. When I attain awakening and shower down the teaching that leads to immortality, you who have pure minds shall come and listen to the true Dharma. He's telling the gods, when we're back on the planet of Earth and everything, and I'm teaching the Dharma, you guys, you be with me. So thank you all very much. Any last words? Okay.
Great discussion as always.
Thank you very much. All right. So then we'll meet again next week and talk to you soon. And I hope you're all going to be able to join us for Lama Jerson when he's here in a couple of weeks, 10 days or something like that, with the Buddha Amitabha Empowerment. It'll be on Zoom. And also the teachings on POA, the transference of consciousness. So if you can make it in person, it'll be wonderful. If it's on Zoom, that's terrific as well. So we would like to enjoy your support.
So Lance, will it be in Baltimore, like physically Baltimore, or?
It's going to be in Baltimore. It's going to be at the Nepali Mandir.
Okay, that one, okay.
Yes, so I sent a message today with the flyer and everything. So I hope that, if you need any conversation about it, don't hesitate to let me know. We can talk about it. But it'd be great if you can come up. Okay. A quick dedication. By the virtues collected in the three times, by myself and all beings in samsara and nirvana, and by the innate word of virtue, may I and all sentient beings quickly attain unsurpassed, perfect, complete, precious enlightenment. May the teachings of the great Drikung Kagyu Shri, who is omniscient, Lord of the Dharma, master of interdependence, continue and increase through study, practice, contemplation, and meditation until the end of samsara. Om, Ah, Hong. Om, Ah, Hong. Om, Ah, Hong. May my body, speech, and mind become inseparable with the body, speech, and mind of all the enlightened ones for the benefit of all sentient beings.
Good night, everyone.
Good night, Debbie. Thank you very much. Alex, thank you very much. Okay, sorry we lost Kunga. I'm sure he had to go, something important.
Yeah. Sorry, my sound didn't work. This car is interfering with our Buddhist listening in on what we're saying.
All right.
Okay.
Have a good night.